Hello and welcome to The Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of The Gaggle, Peter Lavelle, host also of RT's talk show Crosstalk. Today, the U.S. House of Representatives is expected to vote on the articles of impeachment, and given that the Democrats hold a small majority, and given that it's clear that some Republicans, including the number three person in the House leadership, Liz Cheney, tend to vote to impeach the president, then it is a foregone conclusion that President Trump will be impeached for a second time in his one term. Liz Cheney is, of course, a chip off the old block. She adheres to all of the positions of her father. And she's a congresswoman from Wyoming, which is simply her father's, his father's back pocket. I mean, he owns Wyoming, so she's safe there. How she came to be the number three in the leadership is an interesting question. What is more fascinating is what is going on in the Senate, because we know that to convict a president, 67 votes are needed. We can take it as pretty much a given that all of the Democrats will vote to convict the president, even including Joe Manchin, who has expressed some skepticism about the impeachment, but usually he always falls into line eventually. So that's 50. So therefore, there are 17 votes among the Republicans that need to be picked up. The New York Times today reports that Mitch McConnell, who is formerly the majority leader, now the minority leader, has expressed his general support for impeachment, and he's happy to see Trump impeached because he wants to see the back of Trumpism, the Trumpian movement from the Republican Party. Whether he will indeed vote to convict, we do not know. But we do know that he is clearly very much sympathetic to the goal of impeaching him. It is interesting as to why essentially the most senior Republican next to the president in the country should want to see his party split and destroyed in this way. But there it is, and that's something that we intend now to discuss. So what's your take, Peter? Why would McConnell want to see his party split and destroyed?
Well, first of all, I want to tip my hat to you, George, because you've been amazingly accurate over the last couple of weeks as we've watched this story. Obviously, there's been never any love lost between McConnell and Trump. We saw that during the entire 4 years. As a matter of fact, just can you think of an image of them together even? I mean, nothing comes to my mind. I'm sure they met, but there's no kind of display of teamwork in all of this, okay? And of course, during the Trump administration, when McConnell is mentioned, it's the vast majority of the time it has to do with court appointments, okay? That's what he's prided himself on ever since the Bork incident. So that, that burning rage has been in with him for decades. But other than that, he, basically, much more in tune with the libertarian line, get a tax cut, a little, cut a little bit regulations, we're done, right. Okay. And then, McConnell's behavior during the discussions about a new stimulus package before and after the election, no hero there, okay? I mean, he cannot be bothered, okay? Right. He cannot be bothered about it whatsoever. Right. There was a New York Times report yesterday, and there seems to be a little bit of confusion about what it really means. We saw on the Fox evening programs, they called and asked for clarification from McConnell's office, and they just said basically, these basically exaggerations and things like that, but they didn't clear up the situation here. Yeah, I think McConnell represents his elk, the old country club Republicans, and, Trump was this bore that accidentally got in the door. And, we're not going to let that happen again. They hold their nose when it comes to populism.
Yep.
We got donors, we got work to do for them. This guy is just, upsetting everything.
Right.
So, I guess what kind of surprises me, and as you introduced your question to me, and I think this is the big thing to be thinking about, is that McConnell, he can have his own private thoughts. Okay, we've long suspected, like other Republicans of his type, they have nothing to do with Trump. Trump is an accident of history. Oh, we happen to be in the same party, so let's kind of gorge at everything we can. But other than that, we don't owe him anything. The interesting thing is that they're not looking at the base, because it's not their base, which is kind of interesting. Is because if you look at the McConnell types, tradition, recent history has told us they can't get elected. Right. Okay, they can't get the White House. Yes. And then you have this Trump populist base, and we have no idea what's going to happen to it now. But they did get across the line with that base. So together, a very odd marriage. Okay, but it worked. At least it did once. So it's what kind of signal is McConnell sending to the rest of the party? It's very unclear. If the reports, the interpretations that some people have from the New York Times reporting, that's not obviously not going to go down well. And on top of it, George, Trump is on the ropes. He's on the way out. His post-presidency looks like a nightmare. He's being treated as if he's a leper, a toxic social person now. And then you kind of do this to him in the last 200 hours of his presidency. That's not going to go down with a lot of people. And Republicans are not uniformly behind the president, needless to say, when it comes to the events that happened last week. But seeing someone in such a senior official turn his back on the president in his moment of greatest peril, which he will not recover from, and I'm saying this after he leaves office, and of course the whole impeachment thing. So McConnell is a career swamp creature, likes the old way of doing business. Hey, it works for him, all right. But it shows that he's been out of touch with how the party has changed over, I would say, at least since 2014, 2016, when we started seeing a realignment going on. If you really want to understand in a big picture way, look how Trump took on the primary contenders in 2016. That gives you a snapshot of where this country stood and explains the election. But Mitch McConnell, he'll never really explain, and he'll get along by going along. People like McConnell, majority of the time, he's been in the minority anyway. He got used to it. The donor money still comes. It's a very, very cynical thing.
What's interesting is that Trump has tried to work with the Republican Party establishment. In other words, he came to power, yes, as a populist, somebody who shook up the Republican Party, who swept aside all of the mainstream contenders against him. And once he won the presidency, he nonetheless tried to work with Paul Ryan, who was then Speaker of the House, as well as McConnell, who was the Senate Majority Leader. The man gave his wife, Elaine Chao, a job in the cabinet. So he has tried to placate them. And, you have to say, Trump, for all his boorishness, was actually quite skillful in trying to keep together that coalition of a kind of establishment Republicans as well as the populists. So, many of the populists were really not very happy. There were all sorts of things that they didn't like, and they didn't think he pushed his issues, immigration particularly, strenuously. Many of the anti-war libertarian types who had supported Trump in 2016 weren't at all happy with his foreign policy. Nonetheless, he hired a lot of neocons into his administration and pursued, a slightly less interventionist or a more prudent neocon foreign policy. But the Republican establishment was not prepared to accept anything from him. And so therefore, the moment he seemed vulnerable, immediately after the November the 3rd election, they pounced. And they really didn't support his campaign, essentially to question the election. And then in Georgia, you'd have to say Mitch McConnell really almost went out of his way to lose those two Senate races with a view to blaming those defeats onto Trump. And that's exactly what it is. I mean, if you're trying to win an election, I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to say, hey, we want as big a check to be sent out to everyone as possible.
It's about politics.
Yeah, but and instead to insist on $600 when people are expecting $2,000, I mean, that's generally political suicide. And
the two Democrats, they ran. I saw the signs where, you know, $2,000 coming your way, something along those lines. I mean, they ran on it. I mean, and it worked in Georgia.
That's it. And you got that. And then you come along with these weak candidates, and you really don't do anything to support Trump's campaign to challenge the election results. And of course, what happens when entirely predictably the Trump base really didn't show up in the runoffs, and it was, you know, McConnell and the Republican establishment said it is all Trump's fault. He lost this election for us, even though these two candidates were actually selected by Mitch McConnell. But they blamed it on him, and of course now they're making their move against Trump to extirpate Trumpism from the party. So yeah, you know, and then they hope we can go back to the good old days: tax cuts, deregulation, interventionist foreign policy, massive spending on the military, and that's about it.
Yeah, you know, one of the interesting things is that, you know, it always upsets me how the culture wars have kind of slowly but seeped into the Republican Party. At the end of the day, George, I think it's a cultural thing. I mean, people like McConnell that, you know, are in these very high August positions, and they look at a lot of Trump supporters and they're shocked by it, and they don't want to be associated with it. And, you know, if you look at members of Congress, you know, and I'm not going to name names here because I don't want to go out attacking anyone, but, you know, a lot of these Republicans, it kind of reminds them where they might have come from, the kind of communities that they came from, and they climbed the ladder. They succeeded in reaching the summit, and then they don't want to look back because they're embarrassed about it. I think, you know, people should see the next Netflix film, Hillbilly Elegy, which is it's about J.D. Vance and his family. And I think if you watch that, you can understand that there's this sense of shame. And it's neoliberal party politics and policies that did this to these people. And I think for McConnell, he wants to see himself as different and being part of polite society. And, you know, and of course, do you know any official reaction from McConnell's office to last Wednesday? I don't. Okay, but I mean, I'm sure that abhorred him, like so many of us, but maybe for different reasons we're not really aware of, because he likes the votes, but he doesn't like the voters, and that's the problem.
That's right. No, that's exactly right. I remember when in 2014 the Republicans won back the Senate, and he now became the Senate Majority Leader. And he was asked, the first interview is like, "What's your agenda for for the coming session?" Well, we're going to push for corporate tax cuts. That's it. That's his agenda, corporate tax cuts. I mean, that's his solution for pretty much any problem, because that's his base. His base is the corporate roundtable, the Chamber of Commerce, the Rotary Club.
But in a way, his base is up. Okay,
Listen,
Okay, because the money falls down and he grabs it, okay? He
it.
doesn't want, dimes and nickels from these rubes. Who
Right.
cares about them, okay?
They don't have
Money's up there and over there and over there.
That's right. That's exactly it. And Peter Schweitzer, a couple of years ago, wrote a very good book about people who have become very, very rich in Washington. And one of those people was Mitch McConnell and his wife Elaine Chao. They've become extremely wealthy because, as you say, their base are people with money, whereas Trump's base, they don't really have any money. They'd like to have some money. So McConnell said, hey, I can't really do anything for you. I mean, I'm not in the business of giving you money. I'm in the business of receiving money. So yeah, McConnell has no time for Trump. And but of course these people, and this is where I think it is mysterious, is that they haven't quite figured out how are we actually going to win presidential elections, national elections. I mean, we can win this or that Senate seat, we can win a governorship here and so on. We're not actually going to do anything there, but they haven't really figured out how do you win a national election. And that's something that is now clearly beyond the ability of the Republicans.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And you have to think about it. I personally think that Trump will not make a run in 2024, but he's Trump. Okay, so who knows? But the interesting thing will be is that in 2022 and in 2024, within the Republican Party, the reference point is always going to be Trump. Always going to be Trump. What would Trump have done? Would have Trump said? Okay. Or it's going to be we saw what Trump did, and do we want to go down? See, the whole and they're going to hound him. They're going to try to break him financially. This is a lynch squad. Okay, they're not going to be done until he's utterly destroyed, in probably every single way.
No, I think that's a very interesting question because his brand has been badly damaged at the moment. I mean, things could change. News moves fast, but the moment that Trump brand, which is how he made his fortune for many decades, has been damaged. People will not want to go and stay in Trump resorts and Trump towers and Trump hotels.
And people want to hold events there. Okay,
exactly, they want to hold events like the golf events and so on. So that's going to be a blow. I mean, he, particularly if he is going to be involved in lawsuits and everything, is that he doesn't really have money. The money is not coming in. There's not going to be a new Celebrity Apprentice show. So that's going to be a serious problem.
He's got a lot of debts. He's got a lot of debts to pay over the next 3 or 4 years.
And then you've got like Deutsche Bank that doesn't want to work with him. So again, if he has debts, which banks is he going to go work with? So again, that is going to be a problem for him. I think he does intend to come back, but he's got a lot of roadblocks ahead of him.
Yeah, and again, to kind of stress the point here is that McConnell wants to, our words, wants to rid the party of Trump and Trumpism, but it's easier said than done, okay? Because the reference point will remain on Trump for a while to come. Definitely. And it's something that the Republican Party is going to have to either embrace, which would be toxic at this point, but it certainly can't avoid it, okay? Right. Because there are going to be still so many people that will say, we want another Trump. We want someone like Trump, right. Okay? Right. And there's nobody out there because there isn't going to be anyone like him, okay? No. I mean, people have often speculated, and I think it's interesting, is that, and I'll give my opinion, kind of, a preamble to my postmortem or eulogy of the Trump presidency, is that he had a lot of good ideas. It just, he didn't understand how government worked, and he compromised with the worst possible people. And just kind of a failed messenger. A lot of the messages still resonate with people, and the Republican Party could better, understand that. And if the Democrats don't want to get slaughtered in 22, they better start waking up to a working class that is fed up. Okay. And so you can take down their guy, but it's not going to change how people feel about the issues. Not at all.
Well, that's a very interesting question, because of course, if he does come back, it would be, he would have to say, I'm going to run entirely on a populist platform, and I'm going to rely on my core supporters. And then you say that where did I go wrong during my first term, which it was that I put my trust in people who had no time for me, had no time for my populism, for my non-interventionism. All the people I pointed, all the McMasters and the Elliot Abramses and the Elaine Chow's and all the rest.
And cutting a deal with Paul Ryan.
Paul Ryan, all of that. And I went out of my way to placate all these people, to win them over to my side. All of that, in the end, just did nothing for me. Every single person who worked for me has stabbed me in the back. Not one person who has left has written favorably about me. So this time I'm coming back, and I don't want to have anything to do with those people. I think that'll be Trump's message. Whether it's possible to do that I'm doubtful about.
Well, and can he get his message out?
Right, exactly. Because the Republicans are going to fight against him. I mean, they're going to be ready.
No, I mean, if the news reports of what McConnell had to say, and then the swords have been drawn. I mean, it starts now. It starts now.
Right, exactly. They exactly. So they're going to put as many obstacles as possible for him to try to win that nomination. So just like the Democrats were caught flat-footed in 2016, but made preparations for 2020, the GOP establishment is also already making preparations for any Trump return.
Yeah, but I mean, if we can just put Trump to the side of the board, if we can. 2022 is coming right at us here, and he's still in the thick of everything. Yes. He's in everyone's mind. How are they going to pitch themselves? Right. As what kind of party?
Yes.
That's a mystery. I have no answer to that right now, but it's going to be a dilemma here. But let's go full circle here. McConnell, he just got reelected. He's 78? You told me.
Yeah.
All right, this is his last term. Okay, so I mean, what does he really care? Okay, and that's the point. These kind of Republicans don't care. All right, they don't care about you. All right, they're in their own exclusive club, and you ain't in it.
Right. That's exactly right. He really does not care. He's going to be doing very nicely. He's made a ton of money. He's going to go on making a ton of money. I mean, these Senate Republicans, they're all very wealthy, and they want to maintain their nice little club. If we were talking the other day, is that we hardly know anybody in the Senate. I mean, other than Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, but all the rest are just sort of shadowy figures because they're not really doing anything. They're not doing
their money
except making money. Exactly. So, who are all these people?
It's one of the things I was thinking about this Hunter Biden story and the big guy. Joe Biden, is that I have to believe, particularly in the Senate, but all through the House of Representatives as well, is that this Hunter Biden story is a problem for them, but in a very different way. Is that he shows how everyone's going to find out how it really works. Okay. And all of the children of these very powerful people, they're doing it the same way. Maybe not as egregious as Hunter. Hunter left crumbs, okay? But it's something that I've talked to a variety of strategists on both sides of the aisle, and they just say, they won't say it in front of me on camera, but they'll say, that's how it works here. That's how this city works. Okay, you don't make money off of your salary. You make it off of peddling influence. Okay, I mean the Clintons, they're the crown prince and princess of it. Okay, everybody learned from how to do it from them. Okay,
right. No, that's right. And the Bidens are there, and of course, along, somewhere at number 3, you've got the McConnells, Mitch and his wife Elaine Chao. That's what they've been doing.
Has nothing to do with political party, believe me. Okay, we keep stressing here. There's one bipartisan thing or two. One is foreign wars, fine. Defense spending, fine. And then the third one that is not spoken out loud is grift.
Yeah, that's absolutely. Well, we will, of course, be maintaining our usual laser-like focus on events this week. It's a big week, one of the biggest in American politics, and we will be there to cover it.
And everyone, after this storm passes, George and I got to go back focusing on foreign policy, because that's one of the reasons why we wanted to start this thing here. So it's almost over. We feel we need to do it, but there's a lot of other things that we want to talk about. So keep that in mind, please. Sorry, George.
So, yeah. But remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.